Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that lovely song. This now has become a kind of tradition. Whenever we have a birthday coming up of the direct disciples or speak on that topic, we have this beautiful song about all of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples. Tuesday, day after tomorrow, we'll be observing the birthday of Swami Ramakrishnaanda. So I thought I would speak about him this morning. One of the nice features of the Ramakrishna tradition, when we look at the direct disciples, we see how much variety there was, how united by this one love of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and the tradition and everything, there was still so much room for manifestation of different personalities and different modes of worship. They were all different, and some of them highly philosophical, some of them were deeply meditative, some devoted to service and worship. Most of them a combination of everything. But with Swami Ramakrishnananda, somehow it was reserved for him to manifest this ideal of service, devoted service, specifically to Sri Ramakrishna himself. So this is the one thing that we find in his life, that he had this attitude of service to Sri Ramakrishna during his lifetime, and the transition between that and how he served him after the passing away of the physical form of Sri Ramakrishna were identical. This was a unique thing, how he really worshipping the relics and the picture of Sri Ramakrishna exactly the same as when he served him in this human form. So this is kind of the special feature that we find in the life of Swami Ramakrishnananda. Sri Ramakrishna himself practiced so many different paths. He had so many aspects to his own personality that we see how this was possible, that all of the disciples would be so different. This idea of formal worship, this idea of formal worship to an image. Now we have to remember, during the lifetime of Sri Ramakrishna, this idea of image worship was looked down upon very much in Kolkata, especially by the Western educated people, because of the British and the Brahmo Samaj and others. And the Swamiji himself, Swami Vivekananda, he had his reservations. He was never so much interested in this formal type of worship of an image. But he was asked about it once, and he said, how can I say anything against even the worship of an image or an idol, as people would say in those days, when my very own guru attained the highest through such type of worship? So we see that there was such a scope for different spiritual attitudes and different ways of approaching God and realizing God, because of the different facets of the personality of Sri Ramakrishna. I would say that that's what's really behind all of this. So we see that some of them deeply devoted to scriptural studies, Swami Turiyananda and others, some highly meditative, spend all their time, Latu Maharaj, hour after hour. See, the Latu Maharaj was the real miracle. He used to say to the others, in your spare time, you can read the scriptures. You can do. I can't do that. He didn't know how to read. He was illiterate. So he had only his own mind, how he would spend long hours in meditation. And so each of them were a little bit different. But what we call ritualistic worship is something that we find in the life of Swami Ramakrishnananda, but it was never ritualistic with him. It was a real, actual worship of Sri Ramakrishna, or even before that, if it was Durga Puja, the Divine Mother, through the image. And it was a highly emotional, devotional type of practice, nothing formulaic about it or ritualistic in the ordinary sense of the word. So it was this devotion to that type of worship, but more than that, this attitude of service, serving other people. Specifically, of course, during the Sri Ramakrishna, but in general, the Swami Ramakrishna, he had a very loving heart and always liked to help other people. We see this, of course, in some of the others. Swami Atmajnanananda, how he was ready to lay down his life to help these poor orphaned children in the Sargachi. But with Swami Ramakrishnananda, everything was focused, laser focused on Sri Ramakrishna himself. This was a very special feature of his life. So this is Swami Ramakrishnananda. His name was Shashi Bhushan Chakravarti, and he was born in a village in West Bengal that became a center of our order in 1994. The name of the village was Mail Itchapur, and I remember I went there one time. This was 2 years after that, the only time I went there. It was just a typical small village, what you'll find in West Bengal in many, many places. And he was born the same year that Swamiji was born, that Raja Maharaj was born, Swami Tirtha, many of them were born in that 1863. That year it was July 13th. And most of you know that we observe everything by the Tithi, this lunar type of calendar. That year was July 13th, 1863. And 2 years younger than his cousin, we'll hear about his cousin, Sharat, who became Swami Swahananda. So we find that the two of them will become more than cousins, they'll become like brothers, because something that was very typical in those days, for these very bright students, boys mostly of course, that they would study in the village school till they were old enough to go for somewhat higher education, and they would be sent to live with some relative in the big city in Kolkata, and then go to school there where they could learn English and get a good education and everything. This is exactly what happened with Shashi, and he ended up staying in the house of his cousin, Sharat. So the two of them lived together, really just closer than any brothers that we can think of. So Shashi, he belonged to a very orthodox Brahmin family, of course. His father was a great worshiper of the Divine Mother, and had some formal role, Kurd Pandit of the Raj of Paikpara in northern part of Kolkata, and the great scholar, tantric scholar. So this is the atmosphere. We can picture how these young boys would grow up in this very orthodox fashion in these villages, learning puja from a very early age. He was the oldest of 8 children. And so he was taught how to do puja from an early age. He would do Durga puja as a boy, would spend the whole night sitting in meditation without getting up, like his father. His father, as they say, great tantric, that he would worship Divine Mother. He would do these practices, going into cremation ground, spending the whole night in meditation. So this is how he grew up. This was something that became ingrained in his nature. Mother was an equally spiritual soul. His mother was so shy and so modest that they say that she kept herself veiled even before her own son. So it's something unusual in those days. We know that, say with Holy Mother, in front of strangers she would remain veiled. But this was really something to an extreme. So he had his early education in the village. Then he was sent to Kolkata, and he was a very brilliant student. He had a very sharp, brilliant mind. He got scholarships to study for the bachelor degree, Sanskrit, English, literature, mathematics, and philosophy. And he always had some great interest in mathematics. It was almost like a hobby for him, that in his spare time he would solve these mathematical problems and things like that. Again, very typical of that period, he came under the influence of Keshav Chandra Sen. He and his cousin, Shashi and Sharat, would go together and listen to the lectures. Everybody was charmed by Keshav in those days. He was a brilliant speaker, very sincere, dedicated soul. And at the same time, it awakened some longing for something that Keshav couldn't satisfy within them. But Keshav was humble enough to recognize the greatness of Sri Ramakrishna, and normally we would think somebody who is considered such a high spiritual soul, they'll hesitate to say, no, go to this person. But the Keshav, he had that type of humility, we can say, and reverence for Sri Ramakrishna, that he spoke about him often. He had articles written about him in their periodical that they published. So they had this desire to see him. So together, the two of them, this Shashi and Sharat, they went to Dakshineshwar, and Sri Ramakrishna was very happy to see them. Very often, he would recognize immediately those who belonged to his inner circle. And this was the case with the two of them, Shashi and Sharat. There were others with them that Sri Ramakrishna, of course, was very happy to see everybody, but he recognized these two. He knew immediately that they had a special role to play in this lila, that we can say. So Sri Ramakrishna, in such cases, would very often start speaking words of burning renunciation. And for some reason, he asked the Shashi to take a book from the shelf and read from it. The book was the Bible. And Christ would also speak these burning words of renunciation. So, and this was the words of St. Paul. Now, later we'll find Sri Ramakrishna, he identified Shashi and Sharat as two disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. Some people say Peter and Paul, we don't know, of course, but Sharat Maharaj, Swami Swahananda, he actually went to the Vatican some years later and had some very deep experience there. It was kind of verified the truth of all of this. Now, the others who were there, their other friends, maybe were not so happy about all this talk about renunciation. So one of them asked, is it wrong to marry? In those days, they were getting to the age where parents were starting to think about arranging the marriage for them. So Sri Ramakrishna said, what I have said is between them and me, meaning the two of them. Those who want to marry and lead a householder's life are perfectly free to do so. You needn't worry about it. So this was the very beginning. They felt greatly attracted to Sri Ramakrishna. This is what happened. In all of these cases, they still had great reverence for the Keshav and the Brahmo Samaj, but this pull to see Sri Ramakrishna was so great that gradually they'll start going to him more and more often. We were very fortunate that we have a lot of quotations from Shashi, from Swami Ramakrishnananda, his reminiscences about these early days. He said, after I'd listened to Sri Ramakrishna, I had nothing more to say. I did not have to talk. Often I would go to him with my mind full of doubts, which I wished to clear away. But when I reached the temple, I would find his room full of people and would feel very much disappointed. As soon as he saw me, he would say, come, sit down. Are you doing well? Then he would return to his subject. But invariably, he would take up the very doubt that was troubling my mind and clear it away completely. When Sri Ramakrishna recognized these future disciples of his, he didn't simply recognize them as belonging to the inner circle. He knew each one had a special role to play, and he would guide them along that, in that particular direction. We see this definitely in the case of Swami Ramakrishnananda. During this later period, just before Sri Ramakrishna goes to Kashipur, we can say this is a period when many of the future monastic disciples and some of the householder disciples are starting to experience different ecstatic states, or maybe even pretending to at different times. And there were a couple instances. One was this Baburam Maharaj, who became Swami Premanandaji. He went to Sri Ramakrishna. See, they were very honest. He went to Sri Ramakrishna and said, everybody is having these visions and everything and experiencing ecstasy. Well, why don't I get it? So Sri Ramakrishna said, yeah, let me talk to Mother. That means the Divine Mother. And then he said, Mother told me that you'll get knowledge, not visions and things. So he took these things very seriously. So the Shashi also went to him and said that, please let me have some of these different experiences and things, to see visions of gods and goddesses and everything. Others are having these wonderful ecstatic experiences. I'm not getting these things. So Sri Ramakrishna said to him, okay, you can have these things. If you want them, then how will you serve me? See, he knew that Shashi Maharaj, that would be his whole life, this idea of service. Immediately, Shashi replied, then I don't need them. I don't care for that ecstasy which will take away my opportunity to serve you. So this was from the very beginning. This was his attitude. There was another occasion when he was doing some special study. We've already seen that he had a very curious mind. He liked different subjects and things. He was learning Persian, teaching himself Persian, to read some of these great Sufi poets. And this was also not so uncommon. We see in Swamiji's life how his father had also learned Persian. He was a great lover of Hafiz and others. So he's trying to learn this Persian in order to read this different poetry and everything. And Sri Ramakrishna wanted him to do something and called him once, twice, 3 times. He was so absorbed in reading and study that he didn't hear. And then Thakur finally said, come, what are you doing here? And he explained what he was trying to do. And Sri Ramakrishna said, if you neglect your duties in order to learn Persian, you will lose what little devotion you already have for serving me. Usually he would say, for this place, for serving me. Immediately, Shashi took these books. Of course, everybody threw things in the Ganges in those days. Yeah, with this idea that it can swallow up everything. There was no idea of environmental issues, but so immediately he threw all of his books in the Ganges, and that was the end of that. Shashi was very fond of reading of different types of books. He was especially fond of this Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he read in the life of Chaitanya that he was a vegetarian. So he thought, let me become vegetarian. In those days in Bengal, even today, many of the Brahmins are non-vegetarian. They came from a Tantric Shakti type of family. So he decided, let me be vegetarian. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, we see in many other instances that he didn't care too much for these things. He didn't care much for caste distinction, those who were too orthodox in their ways. Even sometimes, some of them, say Swami Atmajnananda, that he knew they were vegetarian. He said, today you take food from the Kali temple, not from the Vishnu temple. But in the case of Swami Ramakrishnananda, he encouraged it. And he encouraged all of his orthodox ways. Somehow, how, we don't know, somehow Thakur knew that these things would be important to the work that he'll do in the future when he goes to South India. So this was a great help to Shashi when he finally did go. He was very orthodox in his ways. He kept to this vegetarian diet and everything. So we start to see how devoted Shashi was to the service of Sri Ramakrishna, that he could do things that other people couldn't do. He was very strong also. That there was one time that Sri Ramakrishna, he wanted ice. Thakur was very fond of ice. He would put it in drinks and things. He liked ice cream. Of course, we know later he had the throat issue and everything. So the Shashi, he got a big block of ice. This is a very hot season in the Kolkata, and carrying the whole, wrapping it in some cloth and carrying it on his shoulder. 6 miles he walked in the blazing heat. His body was covered with blisters afterwards, and just to bring it for Sri Ramakrishna. So this is early instance of how he would get to serve him later. Now, this really manifested itself more, this attitude, when Sri Ramakrishna had to go to Shampakur and later Kashipur. We all know what happened. He developed a sore in his throat, later diagnosed as cancer, and he needed a tremendous amount of service as the illness got worse and worse. So Shashi had already been visiting Sri Ramakrishna for about 2 years now. So he came in 63, 83, now it's 85, something like that. And all of these young men, Narendra, Rakal, Shashi, Sharad, all of them, somehow know that Sri Ramakrishna wants them to renounce everything. Somehow they seem to feel that this is inevitable, a curious thing, but at the same time, most of them are continuing with their studies. Maybe partly family pressure and everything. We find Narendra, even while serving Sri Ramakrishna in Kashipur, studying for law exams and things like that. So the same thing with Shashi, that he was preparing for his BA examination. And so he would go home, he would take his food there, he would do some study, then he would go and stay with Sri Ramakrishna, as many of the others did. And now he faced this dilemma. He didn't want to leave Sri Ramakrishna. He wanted to stay with him day and night. That meant, how does he do anything else? How does he continue with his studies? So he made that decision that he would give up everything, not worry about what the future will be. That they say he lived with him like Thakur's own shadow. He was constantly by his side. This longing to be with Ramakrishna and to serve him. This was the thing that became his whole life. So he became the very embodiment of service. Now, during this time, this doesn't mean the others didn't love Sri Ramakrishna and didn't love to serve him. They did. Of course they did. But at the same time, many of them were filled with renunciation. Narendra, Swami Vivekananda, Narendra especially, whole time he's doing this, every chance he got, he would go and spend time in meditation. Sometimes he go to Dakshineswar with some of the others. He even took a trip to Bodh Gaya and would light a dhuni, spend the whole night in meditation. Shashi didn't do any of these things. He simply wanted to stay with Ramakrishna. If Ramakrishna wanted anything from him, he had to be by his side. So this we see from the very beginning, this will be the one thing that distinguishes him from all of the other disciples. So when he served Ramakrishna, he forgot everything. He didn't care about his own food, his own comforts, nothing. He could spend the whole night fanning him. It was nothing. He didn't feel fatigue or anything. So everyone was just astounded to see this spirit of service in Shashi. Now, the interesting thing is that Thakur had equal love for Shashi as Shashi had for him. It's a very nice incident that took place during this period. That Sri Ramakrishna, it was probably nighttime and it looked like he's drowsy, getting ready to sleep. So the Shashi thought, now it's a good time, I'll sneak away and I'll clean the latrine. I'll go to the bathroom and clean out the latrine and quickly come back. So it was a very cold night, and without thinking about anything, he just has a light cloth on the bottom. The top is not covered with anything. Somehow Sri Ramakrishna saw that he was leaving that way, and barely able to move, manages to get out of bed because there was some shawl that was in the room, going over towards the shawl to get the shawl. Now, the Shashi, he sees what's happening here. Maybe he had already come back quickly, and he sees that, and immediately he feels terrible. He thinks, Sri Ramakrishna was crawling on all fours. He couldn't even walk at that time. He's crawling on all fours to get to this. So this Shashi, he thinks, what a horrible thing I did. I left, and Sri Ramakrishna was cold. I wasn't there to get the shawl for him. And he said, sir, please forgive me that I wasn't there. I see that you're cold. You want the shawl? Oh, Thakur said, no. I saw you thinking that you were cold, and I wanted to get the shawl for you. So we can imagine how he felt after hearing all of that. So this relationship between the two of them was really something very, very special. So they saw, day by day, Sri Ramakrishna getting weaker and weaker. They knew that this was a fatal disease, cancer. They were told by the doctors. Still, many of them thought, especially the householder disciples, he could cure himself. Others thought that yes, we know that this is a fatal disease, but still weren't prepared for that final day. So no matter how much they knew that it would come, they weren't ready. That final day of Sri Ramakrishna's life, this was August 16th, 1886. So again, we'll get description from Shashi. We all thought he was better because he ate more supper than usual, and he said nothing of going. He had earlier asked Yogin, that's later Swami Yogananda, to look in the almanac to see if it was an auspicious day. Also, he had been telling us for some time that the vessel that was floating in the ocean was already 2/3 full of water, and soon the rest would fill up and plunge into the ocean. But we did not really believe he was going. And he continues, when Sri Ramakrishna gave up his body, I think it was the most blissful moment of his life. A thrill of joy ran through him. I saw it myself. I remember every incident of that last day. Our master seemed very well and cheerful. In the afternoon, he talked for fully 2 hours to a gentleman who had come to put some questions to him about yoga. Before this, there were months where he could barely speak. There was such pain in his throat. A little later, I ran some 7 miles to bring a doctor. This is August. It's not like it's cool or anything. When I reached the doctor's house, he was not there, but I was told he was at a certain place, so I ran another mile and met him on the way. He said he had an engagement and could not come, but I dragged him away just the same. Suddenly, at 1 o'clock in the morning, Sri Ramakrishna, he fell towards one side. There was a low sound in his throat, and I saw all the hairs on his body stand on end. Narendra quickly laid his feet on a quilt and ran downstairs as if he could not bear it. A doctor who was a great devotee and who was feeling his pulse saw that it had stopped and began to weep aloud. What are you doing? I asked, impatient with him for acting as if the master had really left us. We all believed it was only samadhi. They had seen him go into this type of samadhi so many times. It looked like that he was dead to all appearances and yet would come back. We all believed it was only samadhi. So Naren came back and we sat together, some 20 of us, and began repeating all together, Hari Om, Hari Om. In this way, we waited until 1 or 2 the next day. Still, the body had some heat in it, especially around the back, but the doctor insisted that the soul had left. About 5 o'clock, the body had grown cold, so we placed it on a cot, covered it with garlands, and carried it to the burning ghat. Now, we know how all of them, how they felt about Sri Ramakrishna. The Narendra especially, look at the relationship. Every day, he would spend time with Sri Ramakrishna, just the two of them by his bedside, no one else there. Thakur giving him all sorts of instructions about the future and everything. They all had this relationship with him that they all felt Thakur loves me the most. They all felt that. And yet, when Thakur passed away, Narendra, Rakal, all of the others, they had to console Shashi. It wasn't the other way around. Somehow they knew that his pain would be worse than any of the others. So they did their best to try to console him, but he was just beside himself. That he remained motionless in grief. He could barely move at that time. When the time came to collect the ashes, it wasn't Swamiji who carried the ashes, it was Ramakrishnananda. That they put the ashes in an urn, and he carried them to the Kashipur garden house, and they were laid on Sri Ramakrishna's bed. The cremation was done nearby. In the Kashipur, there was a burning ghat there. Later, a portion of the ashes, we know how some were separated without telling, but the portion that went to Ramchandra Datta's house, again, Shashi carried these on his head, this urn. And there was all of the devotees were there. They had it in an urn, but they were placing it in a place where they would kind of bury it. And when the first shovel of dirt was thrown on top of this urn, this Shashi cried out, "Ah, what are you doing? You're hurting Thakur." So now we see that this feeling that Thakur was really alive, that this was something that was special with him. We know when we read about the life of Holy Mother, for example, that how many times Thakur appeared to her in such a way that she was convinced that it was really him. She could feel his hand on her hand. They all had this feeling that Thakur was still there, but with Shashi it was even more tangible. It was something that never left him, this feeling. So this is the first indication that Shashi will serve Sri Ramakrishna after his passing, the same way he served him while he was alive, with the same conviction that he is alive somehow. We don't know what their experience was. Many of them claimed that they saw him. They had or would hear, and some type of. When Thakur said, "I've only moved from one room to another room," this was something that they took to be very literal, and it was part of their experience. Somehow he was available to them in a way that is very difficult for us to understand. So what did the young boys do? We know the story that ultimately they all decided that we should renounce the world. This is what Thakur wanted from us. Because of this Surendra, the great devotee, they were able to rent this house in Baranagur, and one by one they started to stay there. This dilapidated old building that was considered to be haunted, that they lived on the upper floor because there were snakes crawling around on the ground floor. This is the way they lived. They had no money, they had nothing, but they were just filled with this intense longing to do a very deep spiritual practice. So all of them giving up, forgetting about food and sleep and everything, they would spend hours and hours in spiritual practice. The Swamiji said once that demons would have run away in fear seeing the austerities that we practiced during that time. So all of them, only one goal in life, to have the highest God realization, to give up everything, to plunge deep into spiritual practice, except for Shashi. He was the one who kept up the worship. First thing that he did, they had their own portion of the ashes that they had kept separately. They set up a shrine room. They had a picture of Sri Ramakrishna. And while the others are doing their meditation and everything, he's plucking flowers, he's preparing the food offering, he's cleaning the vessels, he's doing everything. And this with great joy. Never once did he think, oh, how lucky they are, they can do all their spiritual practice. This was for him the highest type of service. So we see that from early morning, every action of his had to do with this worship and service of Sri Ramakrishna. And in those days, it wasn't very easy. It would also involve going out, begging food and everything. And this would go on all day long, early morning till evening arati. And he would do the arati. And they used to say this was really a sight to see. He would be filled with such joy, such a divine emotion, that he would be dancing and going back and forth, and waving the same, Jai Gurudev, Jai Gurudev. This was it was a while before they started doing our khandana and other things. In the beginning, this was a very simple type of thing. So this went on. He did everything himself. Gradually, some of the young monks started to join, the second generation, and they would help him. So he had people to help with preparation and puja and things like that. But he also had to make sure that the others had something to eat. They wouldn't take time away to cook or do anything. So he had to prepare food for them. Sometimes it would go hour after hour, they're not coming. He would have to forcibly drag them from their meditation and say, come, eat something. He knew that their health was at stake. So this is how he served his brother monks also. And if by chance they would take a little rest in the afternoon, because they were up most of the night doing their spiritual practices, Shashi would go to a nearby school and he would teach. And just to get a little money for the monastery, who else? None of the others would think about these things. So he did this for several months, that he would do some type of tutoring to earn money for the necessities, the food and the puja things and everything. Then, one by one, all of the others started to leave. They wanted to lead the life of a wandering monk. And Shashi remained. He was the only one there that never went out. Still, the same routine, day in and day out. This went on until finally he took a break. This was December 1886, when they all went to Atpur. It was a very famous incident. This was the village home of Baburam, later Swami Premananda. His mother was a great devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. She invited them all to come. And a very famous incident that every night they would have a dhuni fire. They would sit around and meditate. And Swamiji got very inspired one night, and he started talking about this incident from the Bible, how Christ is talking about those who give up everything, no place to lay their head, that they all vowed to lead the life of a sannyas. Later they found out it was Christmas Eve. And Shashi was there, and we read that Swamiji gave different names to them at that time. And the one that they all felt was most fit to take the name of Ramakrishnananda was Shashi. And Swamiji says once that, I would have liked to take that name, but he felt that Shashi was more deserving of that. So then they returned to Belur Math, and Shashi, he continued the same thing. Sometimes very hot nights, the whole night, he would be fanning the picture just as he had fanned Sri Ramakrishna. Exactly the same way, with a real feeling that it's so hot, Thakur must be suffering. That same mental attitude. And this is how he served him throughout his life. Now, everybody thought that there's no way we'd get Shashi to give this up, that to go anyplace else, that he was so devoted to the service of Sri Ramakrishna and the shrine and everything. But nobody really understood the devotion that Shashi had to Narendra. Of course, they're now Ramakrishnananda and of course, Vivekananda. He had different names, but to Swamiji. No one understood that a single word from Swamiji and he would do anything. This is another curious thing. They're all direct disciples, equals, all direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And yet, the attitude that they all had towards Swamiji was something different, and towards Swami Brahmana, Raja Maharaj, also something different. And we see with the Shashi, he was just like a servant, the way his attitude towards them, and such a reverence that he had for them. So when Swamiji, he did all of his work in the West, and he wanted some of his brother monks to come and help with the work in the West, so he wanted the Swami Ramakrishnananda. And they thought, he'll never agree, but immediately said, yes, Swamiji wants me, yes. Unfortunately or fortunately, he had a very difficult skin condition, and the doctor said, no, you won't be able to bear the cold climate there. So that was given up. But later, when Swamiji came back and was talking to his Madrasi disciples, you know that Swamiji had a special love for these handful of disciples who were so instrumental in getting him to go to the West, to the Parliament of Religions, and in helping with the work. There's Alasingha and others. He was so devoted to them and so appreciative of them that he said, look, we'll have a center for you in of course, we say Chennai, but in those days in Madras. So he promised them that he would send one of his brother monks to start the center there, a center in the name of Sri Ramakrishna. He told the Madrasi devotees, I shall send you one who is more orthodox than your most orthodox Brahmins of the south, and who is at the same time incomparable in performing worship, scriptural knowledge, and meditation on God. So he made this proposal to Swami Ramakrishnananda. Immediately, without a second thought, he said, yes, Swamiji, I'll go. So giving up everything, that whole life there, going alone to a strange place, He doesn't know the language, he doesn't know the people, he doesn't know the customs, everything is different there. But with that faith in Sri Ramakrishna, that he quickly went there and devoted his whole life to the work in South India. He was the light, Swami, he was the light of South India for the monks of the Ramakrishna order. So he goes there to Madras and facing terrible difficulties. There's no money. There are very few people who really could help him. He doesn't know the language. He has to do everything himself. Immediately, of course, he sets up a shrine. This is the most important thing for him. There are days when there's nothing to offer even. There's no food. One time he got very angry at Sri Ramakrishna. He said, there's nothing to offer. This is what you're doing for me. He said, I'll go and I'll take some sand from the beach. I'll offer it to you for your meal, and I'll eat it as prasad. This is his attitude. And then invariably someone would come with some food and things to offer. But he had that type of relationship with Sri Ramakrishna. He would talk to him. He was just like a living person. Again, there we'll find him fanning him all night long. If there's a leak in the water, he'll stand over with an umbrella. Just as he did when Sri Ramakrishna was alive. He would conduct classes throughout the city. He would go, and very few people were there. Who were these monks from Bengal who were coming here? We don't know. Who is this Ramakrishna? For the general people, it took a while before they could appreciate him. One time he went to give some class on the Upanishads, I believe, and nobody was there. Only one of the younger monks, I think, Swami Madhavananda maybe, or Shankaranandaji, one of them, was there with him, and he gave a full lecture with nobody there on the Upanishads. So there's other monks said, Maharaj, why did you do that? He said, I don't lecture these people, I do it for Sri Ramakrishna. So it didn't make any difference to him, whether people are there listening or not. He did it for Sri Ramakrishna. One night in the early July of 1902, he had a strange vision that he saw Swamiji standing before him. Now, these visions were not, we say vision, but for him, it's actually Swamiji there. And he sees him as if he's living, flesh and blood, standing there. And Swamiji said to him, look, Shashi, I've spat out the body. And then he spat on the ground. And Shashi, he couldn't figure out what it was. He couldn't sleep that whole night. And next morning, the cable reads that Swamiji had passed away. Now, we think that how did these things happen? But actually, there are many, many cases where people, as they are passing away, they'll appear before very dear, close people. Not great souls, ordinary people. I don't know how they explain it, but it's not an uncommon thing that somehow they'll appear before a loved one and say, now I'm going. And they'll have that experience. Then later they'll find that they passed away exactly at that time. But anyhow, so this is what happened, that the cable reached him the next morning, and he wept when he got the news, and then he arranged for a big memorial, some big service to be done in the city of Madras at that time. He had such a reverence for Swamiji that once he was taken to a place where Swamiji had stayed when he was traveling there, and as soon as he heard this is where Swamiji slept, that he started rolling on the ground back and forth and started kissing the ground where Swamiji had laid. So, we read that they had their spats and that Swamiji didn't like so much of his ritual and everything. One time they almost came to blows. It gives a very wrong impression how deep the love was between all of the direct disciples, especially these two. So Swami Ramakrishnananda, he worked 14 years, worked very hard to build up his work in Madras, and two special occasions during this time, one the visit of Swami Brahmananda, and one the visit of Holy Mother. He took them, these are different times, to Rameshwaram and other places like that. One very nice thing took place in Bangalore when the Holy Mother was there. She was taken to a little hillock so she could see the sunset. And when Swami Ramakrishnananda heard this, that immediately he thought, Parvata Vasini is Divine Mother dwelling on the mountaintop. And they were Parvati or Durga. And started singing some hymns and everything. Now this is a little pilgrimage place. People go there. They set up a little special shrine and everything. And it's considered a very holy place that when Swami Ramakrishnananda was able to see Mother as the Divine Mother at that time. Sometimes we find the passing away of these great souls is equally inspiring as their lifetime. And this was definitely true with Swami Ramakrishnananda, that he really practically worked himself to death, that he developed diabetes and was diagnosed with tuberculosis. This is in April of 1911. So they brought him back at this time to Bangalore. They took him to Bangalore first because climate was good there. They thought he might improve there. That didn't help very much. So Swami Brahmananda and Sharananda asked him to come to Kolkata, where they could look after him and serve him there. So he moved into the Udbodhan, the house where Holy Mother was staying, into one of the rooms there. And Swami Sharananda, his beloved cousin, got to serve him day and night. The other Swamis, Brahmananda and others, Swami Premananda, would very often come from Belur Math to see him. Holy Mother was in Jaidambati at that time, and she didn't come. We can only surmise that it would have been too painful for her, that somehow she knew that she wouldn't be able to. Every time any of the direct disciples died, it was really, they were her children, as much as any child from a mother can be, that it was extremely painful for her. So she remained in Jaidambati at that time. And so his condition is getting worse and worse. A few days before he passed away, he said to his attendant, bring 3 asanas, little carpets like we have, and lay them on the floor. And don't you see? Thakurman Swamiji have come. Now, the interesting thing is that Mother is still living. Thakur and Swamiji have both passed away. Equally, he sees them. That they've come. He says, please offer a seat for them to sit on. And then the attendant didn't know exactly what to do, where to put it. He, of course, doesn't see anything. So then Swami Ramakrishnananda, he says, can't you see? Thakur has come. And the others also. So the attendant did that. He put the 3 asanas down. And Swami Ramakrishnananda, he bowed down before them. And then he said, now they've gone. Please take them away. Then we get to the final morning. There was a devotee named Pulin Mitra. He was considered to be one of the finest singers of his day, and he was the disciple of Swami Brahmananda, so very close with all of them. And he came to see Swami Ramakrishnananda. And the Ramakrishnananda, he told him the vision that he had of Thakurman and Swamiji. And then he expressed some of this, his feeling at that time, with just 3 words. This Pohala Dukho Rajani. This the night of misery is over. And he said, you please go to Girish Ghosh and have him compose a song with this line in it. So immediately he did it, and Girish practically on the spot, he composed the song, and this Pulin Mitra came back and he sang this to Swami Ramakrishna over and over again. Then finally, he said to this Pulin Mitra, now sing Swamiji's Song of Samadhi. And that was the last song. He went into an ecstatic mood. He went into deep state of Samadhi. They say lasted 3 hours, the last 3 hours of his life. And then they saw his face became flushed, his hair stood on end, gaze became fixed between the eyebrows, and he breathed his last. So this was that life of dedication of Swami Ramakrishnananda. Now, I just wanted to say a few little things. How do we put these things into practice in our own lives? Now, the difficulty is that, at least for me, I cannot pretend that I actually see Sri Ramakrishna, that I know that he's living and alive. I have my own way of understanding these things, of course, but not the way that they did. Say, for example, Mahapurush Maharaj. he used to tell the young boys at Belur Math that when you sweep the path, make sure that it's swept perfectly. There are no pebbles, thorns, nothing like that. And they would say, why was he so particular? He said, Sri Ramakrishna walks here. Now for them, it was literal. Now, how do we understand that someone in subtle body, if they see him that way, can feel things on the ground? But it was a literal thing. Now, what do? We try to feel, how will we keep things if Sri Ramakrishna were still alive? A slightly different way of doing it. Say, Holy Mother, if she would offer food to the picture of Sri Ramakrishna, she would see that he is actually looking through the picture, seeing the food, partaking of it. She would see light come out of the eyes in the picture, that the picture and the person are one and the same. We can't pretend, at least I can't, that I really experienced this. But what we can do is when we offer something, we can think, how would I offer this if Sri Ramakrishna were actually here in flesh and blood and were here to take this? What would my attitude be towards that? And just like, for example, if a student is in school and taking an exam and wants to get good marks for the exam in order to go home and tell the parents, look, I got an A+. How proud they'll be and everything. And then later in life, when the parents are gone, still wants to do everything with the idea how proud they would have been to see this. Take that type of attitude. This we can all do. And not just offering food in the shrine, cooking food for the family, whatever it is that we do, feel that how pleased Ramakrishna would be, or Holy Mother, if they could see this attitude of service, this devotion, this attention to details, to do everything with that devotional, loving type of attitude. For me, this is the lesson that we can take from all of this. I don't expect to be able to be like a Swami Ramakrishnananda, to be able to say that, yes, Thakur is living alive, that he knows everything I do, he sees my worship and all of that. I'd like to feel, of course, that on some level this is true, but otherwise I can say, how would I do all of these things if he were here watching me? And if I had to serve someone knowing that he dwells in all the beings, or he's able to see all of this, how would I do it? To me, this is the lesson that we can take. And we can see how through this service, not that he didn't do his meditation and spiritual practice, he must have, of course, but through the service, how he was able to attain to the highest possible state of spiritual attainment. So, this is my little offering to Swami Ramakrishnananda. I have some special affection for him, as I do for all of the direct disciples. We feel these are our family members. Somebody once asked me, why don't we put the names of all of the pictures around the room? So I said, do you put the names of your relatives at home around the room? These are our relatives. Take 2 minutes and learn who they are at least. If not, read about their lives and everything. So it is a great privilege for me to be able to talk about these great souls. These are the ideals for us. If we don't have them, sometimes Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, they're too high for us. We have these direct disciples that represent this tremendous ideal for us. So let us take a few minutes and we can sit quietly now.